When you think about the most memorable zones in World of Warcraft, iconic regions might come to mind like Elwynn Forest, the Barrens, or Tirisfal Glades, areas with not only recognizable environments, but lots of content and reasons to go on memorable adventures there as you level up. For some players though, myself included, we might gravitate toward more austere locations, places that aren't given quite as much attention or praise, but are nonetheless distinct and memorable in their own ways. The barren Deadwind Pass, quiet and menacing, or the crystal-laden desert of Silithus perhaps, but near the top of my list is Azshara, a unique and varied land forgotten in time and to some extent by the developers themselves. It is widely regarded as one of the game's unfinished zones, but despite this, there are still many scattered pieces we can pick up and examine. The Cataclysm revamp of the old world gave the zone a complete overhaul, transforming it into an over-the-top playground of content for goblins and their experiments. But classic Azshara, while unfinished, is tranquil and beautiful and filled with lore and secrets, and today I want to talk about them. I'll be examining each region of the map, discussing some of the main story elements present in this isolated zone, and pointing out dozens of small details you may have missed while questing here. I found so many more things than I was first expecting to cover, and I hope you enjoy this deep dive into one of WoW's most mysterious zones. As always, thank you for the fun comments and support, and with all that being said, let's get right into it. Officially, Azshara has one entrance, an ancient elven bridge that crosses the South Fury River on the eastern edge of Ashenvale. Unless you're one of those weirdos who likes to swim around the coastlines of Azeroth, not sure who enjoys doing that, this is the only realistic way you'll enter the zone on foot. Right off the bat, there are a few details to notice. For one, there are these strange wooden totems at the edge of the bridge, which could be a first clue as to the demonic presence that lingers in this zone. Or potentially could be some type of Furbolg ward, but these assets are more commonly associated with demons. Speaking of which, if you play on today's classic servers, you'll notice the eyes of the statues are blue instead of green, a seemingly random change that is actually rooted in Chinese censorship of glowing green eyes and demonic symbolism. Once you step foot in Azshara, you'll also notice the music changes to a more sinister tune, the same eerie track found in the Plaguelands. It's a reused track, sure, but one that I think fits really well for the forested areas of the zone, especially as we continue to uncover the abandoned, almost liminal feel of some of the spots here. Just off the path lies Tel'Rendis Point, the lone Alliance base in the region. There's a flight path, an elven graveyard, a single vendor, a few night elven sentinels, and one quest giver, Lo Atu, a Tauren naturalist who's here to help restore balance to the land. Already you can see signs of ancient Night Elven civilization and its apocalyptic end 10,000 years ago. Crumbling walls and strange inscribed stones litter the camp, and there's a more substantial jumble of ruins not far off. The guards here are some of the only NPCs in the game who are hostile, but not aggressive to horde players, and you can roam around the camp safely as long as you don't antagonize them. The two quests given by the Tauren are open to both factions, and they serve as something of an introduction to the zone and its inhabitants. The first quest takes place nearby, clearing out the ruins of Shadowsong's Shrine of Unfriendly Spirits. The shrine is likely named for the Night Elven family of the same name. Maiev and Jarad Shadowsong are two important characters in the lore who have history dating back to the Old Empire, and it's possible their family line was influential enough to construct such a site. There's another reference to the Empire and the War of the Ancients to be found here as well, Varothen's Ghost, a rare wraith spawn with a distinct blue appearance. Varothen was the captain of Queen Azshara's personal guard, and a secondary antagonist in the War of the Ancients book trilogy, now reduced to nothing more than a vengeful spirit. You're also sent out to purge the forest of the Haldar Satyr, vile creatures that befoul the land and conduct dark rituals. This is your first outing into the first of Azshara's two main biomes, the autumnal woods. It is said that the perpetual gold and red hues of the forest are the remnants of an ancient enchantment, a magical blessing that's lingered here long after the fall of an empire. Deep within the Satyr ruins there is one extra secret to be found, an elven sentinel lying captured or injured on the ground. Sentinel Caldara Sunblade isn't linked to any quests, and you can't really help her out, but a relative of hers named Dahlia can be found at the Temple of the Moon all the way back in Darnassus. Perhaps these are clues pointing to an unfinished rescue or escort quest involving these two warriors. Once you make it back to camp, Loa-Tu rewards you with his knowledge of Azshara, giving you an expanded overview of what you can expect as you venture deeper into the zone. He can tell you a bit about the land itself, named for Queen Azshara of the Old Empire, the sizable ruins of Eldorath now swarming with Naga, the mysterious Mage Tower and the Furbolg presence in this zone, and the Blue Dragonflight's territory to the southeast, none of which are fully explained. And with that, you're on your way to exploring the rest of the zone. Now that we've covered the Alliance camp, I'd like to now go over what the Horde is up to here, and the predicament they found themselves in. To the north of the main road and past the Haldar encampment lies Valormok, the only Horde base in the region. It's a pretty sparse outpost, with only a few vendors and quest givers populating a few small huts. It's unlikely you'd ever stumble across here unless you're working on the main Horde quest chain, which is simply called Betrayed. According to Belgrom, Rockmal, and Orgrimmar, the Horde recently contracted with a Blood Elf expedition from Quel'Thalas to venture to Azshara in search of riches. The Orcs sent along a squad of their best warriors to protect the Elves during the expedition, but were eventually betrayed by the Elves and their leader, Magus Rimtori. Now, Belgrom wants revenge. It should be noted that this questline was removed for a brief spell during Classic as part of the brand safety update in 2021, which removed or altered so-called offensive or rude references from the game. While many of the changes were pretty minor, this is one of the few examples of a meaningful chunk of XP just being deleted from the game, likely due to Belgrom's initial comment of, "I may have made a grave mistake. I trusted a Blood Elf. What's worse, I trusted a woman." This was later changed, as was the dialogue at the end of the quest line, and the story was re-added with the launch of Burning Crusade Classic. Anyway, once you're sent from Orgrimmar to Azshara in search of the crew, you find your Orcish allies on their last leg. Only a few orcs remain, holding out with limited supplies and unable to go on the offensive against the double-crossing mages. Luckily, you're now here and can dole out some punishment. Traveling to the northeast, you find the Thalassian base camp, where the elves are excavating the highborn ruins on the bluffs near the coast. You can even see their archaeology equipment set up around the rubble. This is one of the very few examples of blood elves hanging out in vanilla WoW, and yes, originally they had these ugly low polygon models that thankfully were updated in TBC. You might even find the rare Magister Hawkhelm overseeing the project, but Magus Rimtori is your primary target, hidden away out of sight. Once you find her personal arcane shrine at the edge of the ruins, you face a difficult decision. One of the 3 arcane crystals summons the mage you need to eliminate along with a Blood Elf defender, but the other 2 are linked to angered infernals that are equally threatening. The options are random each time, and it's a weird random mechanic to encounter out in the middle of such an isolated zone. Once you alert Rimtori to your presence, you make quick work of her and her bodyguard, collecting her head as proof of retribution. Reporting back to Valormok, then to Belgrom and Orgrimmar, brings an end to this short but complete quest chain. But there are a few additional points I'd like to mention. For one, the Kaldorei Tome of Summoning you interact with as a part of this quest is very intriguing. This is obviously a highborn artifact of great interest to the Blood Elves, and is likely the reason why there are subjugated demons that can appear when the crystals are disturbed. With the Blood Elves' addiction to magical energy being a central theme of their story in the Burning Crusade and beyond, it makes me wonder if this was part of the knowledge base they were searching for in order to develop new methods for mana draining, or a cure to their addiction. From a historical perspective, this tome might be significant for another reason. During the War of the Ancients, Azshara and her blind followers were actively summoning demons to Azeroth to bring about the Burning Legion's return. Could this artifact have been one of the pivotal tomes that was used to try and bring about the end of the world? Whether it was or not, it would certainly be a twist of fate for it to end up back in the hands of another faction of power-hungry elves. As you're down here pillaging the dig site, You might also want to pay a visit to Kim Jail, a goblin found just to the north on a small hill. He explains that, like the orcs, he was a part of the expedition to Azshara before the elves turned on him and chased him out of camp. Now, he wants you to collect his supply crates and an item he calls some rune from the Naga in the bay below that the elves were trying to search for. There's not much else we know about this guy or his quest line, but it is interesting he's only ever referred to as Kim Jail, which in Thalassian translates to Little Rat, and is the nickname given to him by the elves. I wonder what his real name is. There is one other quest line at Valarmok which revolves around collecting some ancient tablets from the ruins of Eldorath to the east and distributing them to various interested parties. We'll talk about one of these interested parties in a minute, but the coolest part of this quest is how it has an analogous partner on the Alliance side. The dwarves of the Explorers League want to collect rubbings of the tablets, which are then picked up at a small airport on an island in the southeast. But for now, enough of faction dynamics, and instead let's turn to one of the most secluded, neutral quest areas in this zone, the Azshara Tower built upon the foothills of Mount Hyjal. Not much is known about the reclusive mage that lives with a few trusted apprentices in northwestern Azshara. For rogues and mages working on their class quests, and perhaps others who seek an audience with him too, they must first deal with the most temperamental apprentice, an elf named Sanath Limyo. Before patch 1.7, this guy really tried to gatekeep access to the tower by forcing players to first collect 2 undamaged hippogriff feathers, but after the patch, he was supposedly reprimanded by his master, and now teleports you up to the foothills for free. This is one of only a few spots in the open world that requires a teleport to access, along with the Rise of the Defiler in the Blasted Lands, and a few other pinnacles like the Eastern Twin Colossal in Feralis. Sanath now has a repeatable quest that serves as the teleport, and I remember this being such a cool thing to stumble across as a kid, back when I was probably 20 or 30 levels below what I should have been for Azshara. I also think it's funny the quest was changed from a meeting with the Master to simply meeting with the Master, to signify the change in gameplay. This also corresponds with the addition of the Rogue and Mage class quests that take place here, as it would be rather tedious to farm the Hippogriff feathers anytime you wanted to access this area. Once you're up on the slope, there's another apprentice who's willing to teleport you back down to the bottom, and after a short hike up into the mountains, you reach the tower. Outside, you'll find Coral Moongale, a night elf who doesn't have any real purpose, and inside the tower, neither do the high elves standing around on the top floor. Maybe they're other apprentices or associates of the Archmage, but we really don't know. The only real purpose in coming here is visiting with Archmage Xylem, and while he is involved in a few quests, we don't know much about him. Warcraft 3 Reforged in 2022 retroactively added him in as one of the wizards who traveled to Kalimdor during the Third War, but this was never confirmed before Vanilla WoW. It's also possible, as a few of my subscribers have pointed out, that Xylem could be the lost third apprentice that I discussed in my Tale of Two Wizards video from last winter. Xylem has his own tower, much like Theocritus in Elwynn Forest, and the Dark Sorcerer Morgonth in Redridge, but he appears more neutral and is really just interested in cultivating his own magical sanctum. The area where the tower is found is known as Bear's Head, which for a long time I thought was just an odd name for the tower itself, but is likely instead a reference to the bear-like Timbermaw Furbolg and their encampments that dot the landscape to the northeast. This brings us to another of Azshara's great unfinished mysteries, the Great Gate labeled as an alternative entrance to Timbermaw Hold. The Furbolg have a substantial presence in this zone, and the town of Ursulon to the north of the gate is rather large for not being related to any quests. The one half exception to this is Ogtink, a lone Furbolg hunter located not far away from the area, who has left his tribe in favor of helping adventurers and the Cenarian Circle, and he offers a number of class quests to both hunters and priests. A rare spawn named Gatekeeper Rageroar even guards the massive gate, which as you can see is not one of the Furbolg's signature bearhead designs like in Felwood or other Kalimdor zones, but is rather a copy-paste of the human archways we've seen in other human-controlled territory. In Cataclysm, this area was revamped as a small stronghold of Furbolg known as the Black Maw, but I think it's pretty clear that the original was just a placeholder intended to be yet another entrance to the vast Timbermaw tunnels that wind underneath Mount Hyjal. These might even include parts of the Night Elven Barrow Deeps from Warcraft 3, which could open up a lot of potential areas for exploration. I have a video coming out soon, maybe sooner than you might think, that goes more in depth on this topic, but for now, I think it'll suffice to say this Timbermaw region is rather strange, unfinished, and contributes like so many other pieces of this zone to the general feeling of mystery and abandonment. Before we move on to the more coastal aspects of Azshara, let's check out a few of the remaining details that are found up here on dry land. As we've seen, Night Elven ruins are extremely common and can be found embedded within the ground or poking out of a mountain in pretty much every main subzone. The ruins of Eldorath in central Azshara are the most sprawling, not counting those out on the water, and it's here where the seafaring Naga have set up their main settlement in this zone. The Ravencrest Monument in the far southeast is another relic of an age-long past, possibly built in honor of the influential Ravencrest family who joined the resistance against Azshara and her minions during the war. For unknown reasons, this subzone stands out from the rest as being corrupted and decayed, maybe because of the intruding Naga, or some curse that now permeates the land. There are no distinct quests that happen here, but the strange red glowing artifacts may have been part of a quest that was lost during development. According to the Wowhead database, there are over a dozen unused quests that were marked for Azshara that never made it into the live game. I wonder what other sorts of objectives we might have completed here if the zone was fully finished. Regardless, the monument is a cool feature to see up close, and as I mentioned in my 7 Wonders of Azeroth video, it could be a reference to the infamous Ozymandias poem by Percy Shelley. Just be careful crossing the narrow elven bridges that stretch over the Tidepool canyons far, far below. Lake Minar in the south also shows signs of being overrun with Naga, but is now under the control of the Blue Dragonflight. The Blues are often concerned with arcane magic and secrets, and are likely here to study and preserve them, as is their leader Azurgos, who patrols the woods nearby and can be fought as an outdoor raid boss. Have you ever noticed this strange rock just above Lake Minar? One final magical detail to mention here isn't present in Classic, but was added in the Burning Crusade as a part of the Druid Epic Flightform quest. Druids are asked to retrieve the South Fury Moonstone that rests on an altar here. After a short chase involving a goblin thief and a swim down the river, you retrieve the gem and can proceed with the storyline. We'll come back to one more lingering mystery here in the woods, the matter of the Forlorn Ridge, but for now, let's take a trip down to the beach and explore a few other anomalies of this zone. Being made up of 2 main peninsulas, the vast majority of Azshara's perimeter borders the Great Sea, with the 2 arms of the zone reaching out to create the Bay of Storms in the center. This is where the wreckage and folly of the Highborn is most apparent. The city of Eldorath, and likely the suburbs of the ancient capital of Zinajari, are washed up here on the shoreline, sinking into the unique pink sand. Even when I was a kid exploring this place for the first time, these coastal reaches of Azshara always gave me a feeling of unease. So many buildings, so much evidence of civilization, all taken by the tides. I think this marble archway out on the very edge of the ocean, and the nearby Tower of Eldara are the best examples of this liminal feeling. There used to be more buildings, entire cities extending eastward toward the once mighty capital, now sunk beyond reclamation during the Great Sundering. You might swim out here to see the intimidating Lord Arkarok and his temple, or to find the demon hunter Loramus, both of whom I talked about in my Rise of the Defiler video, or perhaps to seek an audience with Duke Hydraxis, but the majority of this central bay area is just ruins, marble and detritus strewn about for 10,000 years. In the time since, hydras, sea giants, and turtles now call this ecosystem home, and the rare elite Scalebeard even has his own sea cave named after him. In the very center of the bay you can find some floating wreckage that marks the home of Maz, the great beast that holds a fragment of the Scepter of the Shifting Sands. You're going to need a bigger boat, or a bunch of fellow raiders, if you hope to stand against that aquatic menace. And if you want to learn more about the history below this floating landmark, you can check out my Underwater Dark Portal video in the description. Something else I find interesting is how the entirety of the shoreline is divided into 4 equal parts: the jagged reef, the shattered strand, South Ridge Beach, and the ruined reaches. It's weirdly organized, even though there's not a lot going on in most of these coastal spots. The jagged reef in particular is isolated in the far north, and only has one land access route down from the Bitter Reaches. There are a few Storm Bay murlocs scattered around here, but the only other thing to take note of is the massive waterfall that most players probably aren't aware of. Just another example of the subtle beauty of this zone that most players overlook. The ruined reaches are the other stretch I wanted to bring up, as they have their own share of strange and forgotten details. There's a small gnomish engineering outpost where you can pick up the recipe for a deep dive helmet, an alcove where you can meet some shipwrecked pirates, a Naga shrine with no Naga present, and of course the dwarven airport involved in the quest from earlier. It's such a weird area with a lot of secrets despite almost being cut off the map, and there's a lot more to unpack involving the Horizon Scout and her crew of sailors that you can check out in this video. It's impossible to describe all the nuance and every single detail present in these coastal regions, but I hope I've done this zone justice so far, and I'd also encourage you to check it out for yourself. To end on today, I'd like to examine the one place in Azshara we haven't really discussed yet, the mysterious mountain known as the Forlorn Ridge. Soon after entering Azshara, you'll find the Forlorn Ridge just to the south of the main road. This is the outdoor landmark that is supposed to represent the unfinished Azshara Crater Battleground, a massive PvP map that remains mostly finished in the game files, but was never implemented into the game. Let's start with the outdoor area. Like the other battlegrounds of classic WoW, there are specific Alliance and Horde entry points, and this one is no different. Alliance players can find a small cave on the southwest side, and the Horde's counterpart is on the northern slope. The caves are actually just placeholders for what would have likely been official entrance tunnels, but there's a bit more of history to discover here too. The game map of Azshara is actually rather inaccurate, and doesn't show the Alliance or Horde pathways leading up to the mountain, but instead shows a singular road on the eastern side leading up to the summit of the ridge, complete with a cave icon. While this cave and path to the top were removed at some point early in development, you can still kind of see where the original path was going to come up, and at the summit you can see some elven ruins scattered around, and textured areas where the road and cave entrance were likely once located. If we were to imagine the battleground entrances finished, and the Alliance and Horde entering to challenge one another in a battle rivaling the scale of Alterac Valley, what would they find? There are plenty of videos online documenting Azshara Crater, and Haven Games offers a particularly informative look at it. I won't go into all its subtlety, but what I will start by mentioning is its unique layout. A series of 4 interconnected valleys hosting Alliance and Horde bases, a central area with Furbolg and Satyr buildings, and a secluded elven ruin guarded by some massive dragon statues. While the other battlegrounds in vanilla are basically a side A versus side B head-on conflict, Azshara Crater had the potential to be different, more of a T or Y-shaped map that could have led to some unique interactions between players. I also especially like the orange elven lanterns we don't see too often, and the marshy biome near the Horde encampment. It's a perfect addition to Azshara's environment we've come to expect from the outdoor zone. And who could forget the ominous invisible elven temple, cursed by the devs to only appear as if in a void when you get close enough. There are no NPCs in the entire zone, and no music tracks either, making a walk through here a blend between Azshara as we know it, and someplace like Mount Hyjal, just the ambient wind and the sound of footsteps over Forgotten Earth. The battleground was brought up time and time again as a potential addition to the world in a later patch, but when the Cataclysm arrived and the goblins supposedly strip-mined the entire Forlorn Ridge for resources, it seemed like this was unlikely. You never know, maybe it could be resurrected someday, but until then, we'll just have to rely on map viewers and private servers to check out this relic of a world, a mysterious and unfinished extension to one of WoW's most mysterious and unfinished zones. Thank you all so much for watching. Azshara has dozens of strange little secrets to uncover, and I hope you learned something new today. I've linked some of my other Azshara videos down in the description if you're interested in learning more. This episode kicks off a new adventure album here on the channel, The Season of Ancient Echoes. Stay tuned for more deep dives and lore theories, and as usual, there may be some extra clues and secrets to look out for as well. From examining more unfinished content to highlighting the furthest corners of Azeroth, there's a lot more to discover. A special thank you to my channel members who provide bonus support for these videos, and until next time, may the Force be with you.